First of all, a big thank you to Ruan and Sri Lanka Literary Society for giving me this opportunity. And I would get on with my presentation. The title of the presentation is Therapeutic Interventions of Buddhist Rituals in Disease. At the very outset, I may say that, this presentation is based on research work that I undertook in connection with my master's course in Buddhist Studies, which I did at the Pali and Buddhist University, Pali and Buddhist Institute of University of Kelaniya. And also, when it comes to my presentation, it would be basically in two parts. The first part would look into the cancer situation in Sri Lanka and very briefly in Sri Lanka and globally, and also mainly on the rituals that the cancer patients and their family members were involved in. And the second part would be more of doctrinal and philosophical, from a doctrinal and philosophical perspective. And it would look into the Buddhist doctrinal and philosophical teachings and literature regarding disease and health in general. Yeah, for the briefly for an overview of the global and local cancer situation, cancer is supposed to be responsible for 1/6 of all deaths in the world today. And for the commonest cancers worldwide, they are the breast cancer, the cancers of lungs, colon, rectum, and prostate. And for common causes, tobacco and alcohol use, high body mass index, low fruit and vegetable consumption, lack of physical activity, viral infections caused by human papilloma virus, hepatitis B and C viruses, and Epstein-Barr virus, and also exposure to too much ultraviolet radiation in sunlight and air pollution. And as some of us may know, the heartening news, if the disease is detected early and effective treatment is given, many cancers are now known to be curable. This is for the cancer situation in Sri Lanka as of 2019. According to the annual health bulletin of the Ministry of Health, the latest available is for 2019. And cancer remains the third leading cause of death in Sri Lanka, and it amounts to around 7,000 out of around 54,000 deaths in 2019, amounting to 11.7% of all deaths, or roughly around 29 deaths per 100,000 population. And in 2019, it was the 11th leading cause of hospitalization. And here we see a striking increase since 2009, when it was the 16th cause of hospitalization, amounting to 1.7 of all hospital admissions. But by today, it is the 11th leading cause of hospitalization, with amounting to 2.6% of all hospital admissions. And again, with regard to the annual reported cases, we see a stark increase since 2005, and it has increased by almost 2.3-fold from 13,000 something in 2005 to 31 something in 2019. And for the common cancers in Sri Lanka, among the males, the cancers in the oral cavity, lower respiratory tract, and lower alimentary tract are the three leading cancers. And among the females, they are the breast cancer in the breast, and thyroid, and colon and rectum. If I may give a preamble to my presentation, through this study, uh, the study, I expect to explore various aspects related to the influence of Buddhism and Buddhist rituals on the overall management of cancer patients. And I presume by doing so, light will shed upon the usefulness and practicality of the Buddhist rituals in the treatment of illness in general and on cancer care in particular, in keeping with the concept of spiritual health that has been acknowledged by the World Health Organization. Here, I would like to mention that, here we are not looking into the to spiritual health per se, which is a entity of its own. But anyhow, any study of this nature would be impinging on the aspects of spiritual health. And also, those of you who are familiar with this, you may remember some time back, that was around the 70s, the spiritual health came in a big way in the wider health domain. And towards latter part of 1970s, the WHO came to acknowledge spiritual health as one of the key components of healthcare, apart from the physical health, mental health, and social health. And in fact, it is named as the fourth dimension of healthcare. And as I told you before, this is part of a research, and for the research problems or the research questions, basically I looked at what types of rituals do people indulge in, and where would they undertake these rituals, and who would carry out these rituals. For example, whether they are the Buddhist monks, Kapu Mahatyas, or Kapura, or lay people, etc., and whether there were any benefits to the patients, and if so, how and what. And for the objectives of the study, basically there were two. One was to explore the types of rituals and how those were carried out regarding cancers by the patients and their family members in Sri Lankan Sinhala Buddhist Society. And two was to find out the benefits of those rituals in relation to the patient's physical and mental health. For the research methodology, the data for this research was collected through primary and secondary sources. The primary sources include interviews with patients and their family members. 5 patients and or one of their immediate family members were interviewed, and these interviews were carried out according to a structured interview format. The secondary sources include canonical texts related to disease healing and therapeutic practices, modern medical knowledge related to cancers and their treatment, and literature on Buddhist therapeutic interventions across the world, including Sri Lanka. Books, journals, and reliable sources of internet, for example, Google Scholar, were published. Now to the results. As I told you before, we studied 5 patients in all in depth, and 3 of these patients were females and 2 were males. And 2 of the females were dead by the time of research, and only 1 was surviving, but the male, both male patients were surviving. And the persons who provided information, in the case of females, the surviving patient herself gave us information, and in other 2 instances, it was a mother and a sister. And both occasions of with the males, it was the spouse or the wives who provided information. And for the cancers that they were affected with, among the females, there were cervical lymph node cancer, breast cancer, and ovarian cancer. And in both situations with male, it was multiple myeloma. Yeah, now to the the rituals, or what we are more interested about, I think. So here, very interesting thing I saw, that is, with regard to rituals, all in all, I came across 12 types of rituals, of which 7 I would group as strictly Buddhist rituals, and another 5 I would categorize as non-strictly Buddhist rituals. And for the Buddhist rituals, the Bodhi pujas were kind of exclusive, and it was conducted by all the respondents, and also were Set Kavi, and the Set Kavi were written by Buddhist monks, and they were recited by Kapu Mahatyas or family members who were conversant on these things. And also there were offering flowers and lamps to the Buddha, offering pirikara to Buddhist monks, and strict observance of 5 precepts, or Panchasila, observance of Panchasila, and listening to Pirit. And among the Pirit that the respondents listened to were the Tun Pirita, which is a combination of Mahamangala, Ratana, and Karaniyametta Sutta, and Bojanga Pirita, Mora Pirita, Jaya Pirita, and Girimananda Sutta. And also there was instance of drinking water or Pirit pan, drinking water blessed with Pirit, or what we call Pirit pan. And for the types of rituals which I categorize as non-strictly Buddhist, they were making vows to Hindu gods and deities. And these deities include Kali, Vishnu, Patini, Sunyam, and also there was an instance of recitation of Shiva Purana. So that is veneration of Shiva. Actually, I would like to draw your attention to this particular picture, which I think is an interesting one and also kind of a rare picture, because here you see 4 Hindu deities in one picture, which I think is not a very common thing to see. Here you see Shiva, Vishnu, and Kali in her benevolent form. And you may know that Kali is depicted both in her benevolent form as well as malevolent form. In the malevolent form, she is depicted as a very fearsome black character, a lady with protruding tongue. But in the benevolent form, the Kali is depicted as a pretty lady, and also is Patini in the picture. And apart from that, there was for the other rituals, there were offering a life to life, which is called prana to pranaya, and this associated release of animals from either release from death or captivity. And the released animals include cattle, birds, and fish. And also there I found another interesting instance of offering a coconut sapling to a temple, which again is considered as a prana to pranaya. And also I came across meditation, patients practicing meditation as ritual, and which again is not a strictly Buddhist practice. But anyhow, the 2 meditative practices that I came across were, one was loving kindness, or meditating metta bhavana, and other was instance where meditating on so-called godheads. And the godheads the respondents meditated on were Vishnu and Kali. And also there were instances of staying vegetarian to evoke blessings on the deceased. And also there was almsgiving or dana, and dana was given to the poor, as well as cats, dogs, and crows, what we call the Balukaputu dana. This is the second part of, now we get on to the second part of the research, which is mainly the discussion part. And here I would first look into the early Buddhist interventions in disease. In this regard, a very interesting person is Kenneth Zisk, who is a professor in Indology. I think you may very well be knowing that, Indology is the area of study of Indian culture and studies. So he was a professor of Indology at University of Copenhagen. And his famous book is Asceticism and Healing in Ancient India, Medicine in the Buddhist Monastery. This is a very interesting book. And here Sisk says, among all the ascetic practices that were present in the subcontinent around the Buddha's time, it was Buddhism which integrated medical knowledge that existed then to its doctrinal and monastic discipline best. And he further goes on to say, this is because of the leniency or accommodativeness the Buddha's approach had, as opposed to the more rigid positions followed by some other contemporary religions, for example, Jainism, where cultivation of techniques to remove and ease suffering was thought to be a hindrance to the spiritual progress. We know that the founder of Jainism, Mahavira or Nigantanathaputra, was a contemporary of the Buddha, and he was preaching shoulder to shoulder with Buddha then. But anyhow, here Sisk points out that his doctrine was more rigid compared to the more flexible practice of the Buddha, and that allowed the Buddha to bring in his days prevailing medical practice into his doctrinal and monastic tradition. And this further cites Richard Gombrich, and some of you may be knowing Professor Richard Gombrich. I mean, he's quite connected to Sri Lanka as well, and he's a professor of Sanskrit at University of Oxford, and I think still he remains a fellow of the Oxford Center for Buddhist Studies. And Gombrich says Buddhist practice of middle way suited well for the integration of medicine within the Buddhist tradition, as it endorsed the principle that one should treat oneself well enough not to be distracted from spiritual life by hunger, and moderately enough not to be distracted by overindulgence. So I think, this is what we are familiar of, Madhyama Pratipadava, and we know that in Madhyama Pratipada, it's very clearly the Buddha had rejected both Kama Sukalikanu Yoga as well as Attakilimikanu Yoga, or the extremes of austerity as well as the extremes of indulgence. So Gombrich says thus, in order to provide the means to restore a healthy physical balance, medicine ideally corresponds with the philosophy of middle way. So, and sorry, I'm so sorry. I have, missed that slide, right? Okay, here you see that slide, sorry. And sorry, yeah. So, yeah, the text related to what I was saying is here in this slide, right? Okay. And Sisk also says the Buddhist doctrine, it's very interesting that statement, I think, is that the Buddhist doctrine of Four Noble Truths of suffering, its causes, its suppression, and paths to elimination coincides well with the famous medical notion of disease, its causes, health promotion, and cure. So those of us who come from the medical background would know, this concept of disease, its causes, health promotion, and cure are kind of foundations that we get ourselves involved in and practice, study and practice of medicine. And likewise, this has a close resemblance to what to that the doctrine of the Buddha of Four Noble Truths. I will get on to the next slide, which speaks about the Besajak Khandaka. And Besajak Khandaka is part of the Vinaya Pitaka, and it contains no less than teachings of 27 teachings of the Buddha related to the pharmaceutical substances. And in this regard, an interesting study is published as a Prodigy of the Lord Buddha in Medicine, a study of the Besajja Khandaka. And this is published in the Journal of MCU Social Science Review, which is a Thai journal. And here it was carried out by around 3 scholars. And they say that the Buddha was competent in pharmaceutical prescription and healing. And this came about as a result that the Buddha had been a prince in his life, as we know, and received a good formal education, including training on medicine as an adolescent. So he had a formal training in medicine as an adolescent. That's what the researchers say. And thus, he was knowledgeable about nature and the cure of diseases. And later in the development of Buddhist monastic tradition, medicine, interestingly, medicine was one of the 5 mandatory subjects taught, and others being language, arts and mathematics in one basket, and logic and Buddhist philosophy. So those are the other 4 subjects apart from medicine taught in the monastic tradition. Now we get on with the Mahayana Sutras. I found, this is quite interesting. And I would say that, Mahayana, in Mahayana tradition, a bigger place is given to the Buddha's role in healthcare. Yeah, we will get on to that. And there are many sutras related to that. The Sutra of the Buddha as a great doctor, the Sutra on relieving piles, the Sutra on healing mental distractions of improper meditation, the Sutra of healing dental diseases, the Sutra of Dharani for healing all diseases, and Sutra for Dharani for seasonal diseases, etc., etc. There are very many sutras like this. And it is also interesting that the Buddha is regarded as the grand patriarch of Buddhist medicine. So this is a very interesting thing. But actually, I have heard that this term, Bauddha Chikitsava, is used here, but I do not think that that corresponds with this area which is described as Buddhist medicine in Mahayana Sutra. But anyhow, this term Bauddha Chikitsava is found in our jargon as well. And also it is said that most of the pharmaceutical substances that were prescribed by the Buddha were easily obtainable herbs. The Buddha was a model for his disciples on proper practices regarding storage of pharmaceutical substances, handling of related instruments, and appropriateness of healing methods. Yeah. Now, regarding mental health and on promotion of mental health, the Buddha clearly identified the so-called the 3 poisons, or the raga, dosa, and moha, the greed, anger, and ignorance, as the main 3 hindrances to good mental health and thereby to good physical health. And to overcome them, he prescribed uh, contemplation of contemplation of impurity or asubha bhavana to overcome greed, and contemplation and practice of loving kindness meditation, metta bhavana, to overcome anger, and cultivation of wisdom or vipassana bhavana for to overcome ignorance. And these are the meditations that the Buddha encouraged everyone to use in order to heal the diseases of both body and mind. And in this regard, I would like to, share this idea with you that, if I think if we consider ourselves as Buddhist and practicing Buddhist, I think the disciples of the Buddha Vachana, I think mm, involving in meditation should be a part and parcel part of our day-to-day life, without keeping it to the difficult times or till we come to our uh, end of the life. So I think this is one area that needs more attention. And with regard to Buddhist medicine, is expected to address ill health by identifying its root causes and addressing them. If the root causes are not appropriately dealt with, they will simply return time and again from one life to the next. And according to Buddhist medicine, this is achieved only through the application of dharma that brings harmony to chaos and pacification to conflict. Yeah, to the next slide. It is also said, as we know, the ultimate truth of life or the reality of life is that no one could escape from old age, sickness, and death. So this is very clearly stipulated in Buddhist doctrine. And also it is found that when his disciples fell sick, the Buddha did not limit himself to rely on the spiritual healing, but used the available cures in order to lessen pain and sickness. Actually, we see this in early Buddhist literature with regard to Kuchivikaravattu, and also in the story of Putigatta Tissa Thera, and also in Girimananda Sutta. So the Buddha's practical involvement, as it is seen in this picture, is had been there. And the compassionate nature of the Buddha and the message of importance of attending to the fellow recluse when they are sick was very, very clearly seen in Buddhist literature. And in Mahayana suttas, the analogies that describe the Buddha as the doctor, knowledge of the Dhamma as the medicine, monastics as the nursing staff, and all people as the patients are found. I think this is a very, very interesting analogy. And another important point we come to next, that is the Buddha's role in healthcare, especially in mental health care, has been acknowledged both as Bisakko and Salakato. Bisakko is for a general physician and Saldakato is for a surgeon. So, how it is described in literature is, as a surgeon is expected to poke his scalpel into abscess and goes into it and drains off its pus, and excising the dead matter and the debris. It is the Buddha Vachana is expected to go deep into, penetrate into the mind intensively in the initial stage, and thereafter, as a general physician, would be attending to the wound and caring for the wound, dressing it every day, and giving the medicines. A continuous care is expected with regard to deliverance of Buddhist healthcare practices. So this is the role of Buddha that is explained as the role of Bisakko, the general physician, and Sallakatto, the surgeon. And according to Buddhism, it is not enough to approach medicine as a tool to simply eradicate symptoms, and it promotes a spiritual approach to disease and its mind-based causes. And it is also interesting that according to Theravada Buddhist doctrine, all phenomena in the world exist as a result of 5 niyamas, which are considered laws of nature. And namely, these are the Bija niyama, natural law of living matter; Ritu niyama, change of seasons and phenomena related to climate and weather, which is also considered the natural law of non-living matter; and Dhamma niyama, the law of reality, which is impermanence; Chitta niyama, law of mental activity, which is similar to psychology in present day. And Chitta niyama is thought to be concerned with consciousness, thoughts, and perceptions. And finally, is Kamma niyama, law of moral consciousness. And thus, health and illness, as any other phenomenon in the world, are regarded as manifestations of these phenomena rather than abrupt will of a divine being. So here I see two interesting things. One is health, or cure is not seen as an abrupt will of a divine being, and at the same time, it is considered as an interplay. This is opposed to the common notion, if I may say, a common notion, or what generally people tend to say, that if they come across any miserable situation, they would say this is because of karma. No, this is very clearly described in the doctrine that this is karma is just one part of it, and there are other phenomena which are responsible for that. And this again is another interesting thing that I came across in Tibetan Buddhism. There again, they two I think Tibetan Buddhism is part of Vajrayana, which is part of Mahayana tradition. And here again, with regard to disease, they believe in the 3 poisons, the Moha, Raga, and Dosa. And interestingly, these 3 poisons are responsible in bringing about 4 categories of diseases. These give rise to 101 types of illnesses each. And thereby, there would be 404 main types of psychophysical disorders. 4 into 101, 404 main types of psychophysical disorders, and there will be 84,000 types of manifestations. So I thought, thought about this in parallel to the ICD that we are familiar of, International Classification of Diseases, and I just browsed the ICD to find out, how many diseases are there in medicine. And according to the 11th revision, I found that it gives 17,000 unique codes and 120,000 codable terms. So I think in the traditional Tibetan Buddhism, they spoke of 84 types of manifestations. And it is also interesting find that the major Indian subcontinental theories of illness, the uh, yeah, the universe with all its diversity of forms and appearances is composed of the four elements of earth, wind, fire, and water. So this is something common to all major Indian subcontinental theories of illness. So it's a composition of the earth, wind, fire, and water. They govern the biophysical and mental processes of the body. These could be disturbed by the disruptive influence of wrong view, afflictive emotion, non-virtuous conduct, disorderly environment, improper diet, or harmful spirits resulting in ill health. So this is for the literature from Tibetan Buddhist Tibetan doctrines. Actually, now we are coming to the penultimate slide. This again is a very interesting observation, I think, done by Mr. A.G.S. Karyavasam, who was the deputy chief editor of Buddhist Encyclopedia one time, and he was also an editor of the Buddhist Publication Society. Mr. Karyavasam says that majority of the Buddhists are only hazily conversant with the doctrinal aspects of Buddhism. Thereby, a gap is created between canonical Buddhism and the average person's everyday experience of practical Buddhism. And he says this gap is bridged by a complex round of ceremonies, rituals, and devotional practices. And he goes on to identify three types of rituals. One, acts performed for the acquisition of merit in order to achieve Nibbana. These acts include the offerings made in the name of the Buddha. Number two, acts directed towards securing worldly prosperity and averting calamities through disease and unseen forces of evil. Pirit chanting and Bodhi Puja are included into this group. And number three is those rituals that have been adapted from folk religion, example, Tovil ceremonies. In this form, it is expected to derive power for healing through the superhuman power of the Buddha and force of spirits, invoking power of the Buddha or of the three refuges, the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. Well, I mean, interestingly, I think in entire presentation, this is the only time anything to the effect of supernatural things that came about, and that again is what Karyavasam has mentioned about the Tovil ceremonies, where it is believed, and which actually comes from the Sri Lankan folk tradition. And in that situation, they think that there is some superhuman power that they could invoke blessings from. Yeah, so now we come to the conclusion. So this is what I basically saw in this. When someone at home is diagnosed with cancer, the entire family, the immediate family members and members of the extended family come to his or her help, and even outsiders who are dear to the patient's family, they come forward. Although Sri Lanka is a Theravada country, some of the rituals practiced by people may not strictly comply with the doctrinal teachings. However, these practices have existed for thousands of years, a fact that upholds its value and acceptance in popular culture. Numerous references regarding the Buddha's role and influence in disease healing and care for the sick found in Buddhist texts, including the early Buddhist literature, are found in Theravada, Mahayana, and Vajrayana traditions, and more so in the latter two. And it is interesting that the female folk in the family, whether it's the nuclear family or the extended family, will engage more in these ritualistic practices. People also tend to seek the help of Hindu and other deities, even the regional deities. I think Sunyam is one. When their loved ones are suffering from serious illness. Among the Hindu gods, Kali, Vishnu, Shiva, and Patini seem to be the most popular among the Sinhala Buddhists. All the respondents mentioned that these rituals immensely benefited them, both in speeding the healing process of the sick and providing mental comfort. So, yeah, that's all for my presentation, and big thank you to all of you for listening to me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prasanna, for that excellent summary of your thesis. And I'm going to open up for questions. So if anybody has a question, please raise the hand icon or else put on your video and then we can give you a chance to ask the questions. I don't see any hands yet. So probably I'll start with a question to you, Prasanna. Oh, sorry, Arya. Arya has raised his hands as usual. So even with raised hands, you won't see him for reasons which he only knows.
I'm performing a ritual. That's why you don't see me.
Right.
So you carry on. I'll come in after your question.
Okay, so the simple question I wanted to ask you is, you and I, Prasanna, we were born into Christian traditions, and in Christianity, healing is probably a main part. And in the Bible, it says that Jesus has been healing, different people, and also in the more recent context, Pastor Jerome is supposed to be healing. Healing various illnesses, cancers, whatnot, but in my readings of Sutta, I haven't come across any such healings done by Buddha himself. But you mentioned something about there was a role. I mean, could you sort of enumerate if there are any instances where Buddha has healed any sick?
Well, I think here, at least when it comes to the doctrine, I think it is very clear that, the doctrine doesn't talk about magic. So there is no magic in Buddhism. I mean, that is what I have understood. So it's I think it's a case of inculcating or infusing the proper mentality, and it's a combination of inculcating the proper mentality and also indulging in that day's prevalent medical practice. So I think it is very, very clearly mentioned, and even when you take the what do you call, references like Kuchivikaravattu, and in the story of the Putigatta Tissa Thera, and even in Girimananda Sutta. I think Girimananda Sutta is a very important sutta in this regard, where the Buddha actually send the messages across, if I remember right, through Venerable Ananda to Girimananda Thera. So here, what is very clearly said is, that, a part, on one hand, you got to, increase, you got to strengthen your mental status, as well as you follow the accepted medical treatment. So I think, yeah, that is what I have understood with regard to Buddhist way of healing.
I can see Mahendra stand up. Mahendra, yours. Please unmute, Mahendra. You're still muted.
Sorry. Wasn't Sati going to ask a question?
Well, as usual, even with his hand raised, I can't see him.
You might be able to see me now.
Ruan, is it possible to stop screen share
Yeah.
so we can see everybody on the gallery?
There we are.
Yeah, Prasanna, can you unshare the screen, please, so that yeah, we can see everybody.
Actually, I'm not, conversant
Yeah.
much.
What you have to do is there is the share screen button. You press it again.
Right. Okay. Well, let me do that. Right.
Okay. Can
Have
I?
I,
Yeah, while it is there. Yeah,
Can I
just
come in
ask the
then?
person.
have I done the needful?
No,
No,
you
still
have
is
to
there.
Stop sharing.
Stop share. Right. Okay.
That's it.
That's
Well done.
Okay.
Let the tall one ask his question first. Yeah.
yes. Go for the tall one.
Thank you. Thank you. You should be able to see me now. I have managed it. Thank you very much, Pravina. I found it pretty informative and thought-provoking as well. The observation I wanted to make, essentially leading to a question, is something that you have addressed in your conclusions, in saying that, or at least concluding that the practices, the so-called rituals, do not strictly adhere to the doctrine of Buddhism. And that is my starting point. In that context, is it a wrong precept to call it Buddhist ritual? That's my first observation. The second issue I would like to raise with you is, I'm talking as a non-Buddhist who has learned a little bit of Buddhism through association, namely many years ago, back in Badulla, where I was working in the hospital setting, I used to learn a few introductory aspects of Buddhism from a local Buddhist monk who was very learned. He attended the clinic where I was working, and through that process, I came to know him, and he taught me a little bit because I stayed there only for a short time. Otherwise, I would have learned a bit more. So I'm going back to that precept that I mentioned earlier. A ritual to be called Buddhist may be a misnomer. And the second question I have is, in the event that the ritual doesn't, or rituals do not conform to the Buddhism as preached by Lord Buddha, does it lead to misleading the people? That's my second question. Thank you.
Well, whether it's to be called ritual or not, I suppose that's another discussion by itself. So I think it is something to be decided by people who are really conversant on this aspect, what really a ritual means. But anyhow, when we take these rituals as that were discussed in the presentation. Out of 12 rituals, 7 I considered as strictly Buddhist rituals, like the Bodhi Puja, the Set Kavi, so there was, then offering Pirikara to the Buddhist monks and offering flowers, lamps to Buddha. Likewise, there were 7 such practices which I would consider as Buddhist. So I can't think of anything, any other word other than ritual to describe these practices. And again, I think it is no secret that that is how they are described in the common culture. I mean, that's what I feel about it. I do not know whether it really answered your question.
Thank you anyway. It hasn't in full, but I appreciate your
Sorry.
comments. And I
Sorry, I think, there is another part to that, to the answer. Yeah, I think, to answering the question that you posed, that is, it is, I think what really important here is the fact that the rituals, whatever the rituals that they indulged in, led to their mental satisfaction and mental strengthening. So I think this was a positive thing here, and I think this we need to be looked at in the context of what Karyavasam, A.G.S. Karyavasam had said about the Buddhist rituals in disease in his study. Because what he says is there is a gap between the doctrinal Buddhism and the practical Buddhism. And he says this gap is bridged by these rituals and such practices. So that's what I think about this.
Thank you. Thank you very much for those comments. I mean, I do agree with you on that because I do remember listening to Emeritus Professor Nalaka Mendis, who addressed the same thing from a slightly different angle. His title was about rituals per se, mostly referring to what people like Katharias perform and the benefits that accrue from such practices, although they can be considered, or they are considered irrational. Thank you very much anyway. Thanks.
Next, we have Mahendra.
Hello, Praveen. Thank you very much for a most interesting presentation. I just want to put forward a few points. Firstly, there is no doubt in my mind that what I might call a holistic approach for illness, which is not purely on physical terms, but consider the mental aspects and also the aspects of the family, the community, the role they all have to play. I think they are very, very important things. And Western medicine, in a way, is only now coming to recognize some of these important features. And when it comes to mental illness, what you said strengthens my feeling, having read before, that the root causes have been dealt with beautifully by Lord Buddha, although it may not be exactly what we might think so. But I have not seen any evidence in any of what I have read or what you have said that the Lord Buddha understood anything about the physical cause of illness. There's, as far as I know, there's never any mention of microbes or organisms that can cause illness. There's no evidence of the role of blood pressure or for metabolic diseases. And what surprises me is that they have the problem with religion. Religion or philosophies deal with not only what we call verifiable facts, but they claim to know the truth, about everything, not only about causes of disease and the planets and so on. They know everything because it's a realized truth. So if he knew that, why wasn't it ever said anywhere about the other preventable cause of disease and how to address them? So I find that my own conclusion is it's very hard to believe that he knew of all the diseases that affect mankind and what the cause of that, or if he knew, he didn't expand on that. And I remain yet to be convinced that the Buddha knew about illness and its causation, with the little caveat, of course, that we never really know what he said because it's such a long time ago, and we rely on the verbal text and then written text and so on, and there's so many other factors that came in to muddy the waters. But I can't see any evidence that he really appreciated the root causes, as you call, of disease that affect human beings. I don't know whether I'm wrong in this, so I'm happy to be corrected, but that's what I feel.
Yeah, I think it's a very interesting question. I would try to, answer from, whatever little I know. Now, one thing I think is when it comes to explaining these phenomena, what we have to go by with regard to Buddhist teaching is the niyamas. The 5 niyamas describe what the reasons for the manifestations are. So now you mentioned the microbes. To my understanding, the microbes would be described under Bija Niyama. And we know the certain things would be things, to do with the environment would be described in Niyama. Then even now, you mentioned about the NCDs. I think this would fall into the area of Dhamma Niyama. Because now you see, now increasingly the Western world, the Western medicine is now becoming to understand the importance of some of these ancient Buddhist as well as other Indian subcontinental philosophies. Now, if I may say, now you may be aware, in 2016, the Nobel Prize for medicine went to Japanese scientists who talked about, the value of fasting. And I think that now today, I have heard that even in medical schools now and even in medical higher studies, they talk about what is called this intermittent fasting, and talking about fasting, the importance of fasting for 14 to 16 hours a day. Actually, when you look at the Vinaya, that is the Vikala Bhojana, which corresponds well with this timing of fasting. And I think likewise nowadays, mindfulness meditation, it's a big thing. And apparently, I think it's supposed to be the value of mindfulness meditation as an industry, if I remember right, is some $80 billion. Right. I mean, what is mindfulness meditation? What is mindfulness? Satipatthana Sutra. And in fact, this guy, John Kabat-Zinn, he later confessed it, that, he came to India and he learned these things, and he developed this. And I think now it is very accepted things, the value of treatment of NCDs, especially hypertension, ischemic heart disease, things like that through meditation. And I think now they have become or becoming accepted methods of treatment. So I think only thing is, we need to fit these pieces of the jigsaw puzzle into place. And I think with time, we will reveal more and more with regard to, I would say, not only the Buddhist practices and the Buddhist doctrinal teaching with regard to health, but also that of the other Indian subcontinental religions.
Are you aware of any teaching or script where the Lord Buddha has stressed the importance of hygiene, clean water to prevent people getting diarrheal illnesses and so on? I have not seen any, but
Yeah, offhand I can't give you what and what, but these things are very quite clearly stipulated in the Vinaya Pitaka. I think quite clearly. I remember, hearing these things. I think these have. I can't, right now recollect what and what they were, but these things are very clearly stipulated in Vinaya Pitaka. And I think, even in certain other Indian philosophies or religions like Jainism, also these aspects have been discussed. And again, one other thing that I forgot to mention, that even perhaps, you may be aware of this, but I do not know whether this is, really accepted by the modern scientific world. But apparently, there are some studies done on the effect of pirit. And there is a famous study done by that again by a Japanese scientist on pirit, and he says that the crystallization in the cells, you get different form of crystallization by listening to pirit chanting. And again, another very interesting thing before I forget, that is the modern science have identified that through mind training and through meditation, that if I remember right, the left parietal IPL, inferior parietal lobule, will increase in size. And I think right now there are studies going on in this regard. This is a scientific finding. Yeah, either left or the right inferior parietal lobule of the brain.
Probably at this point, before going to Carmen, I can add that, as you suggested, yes, I have read the Vinaya Pitaka. It is full of health advice to the bhikkhus. Now, Buddha did not give this advice to the general population, but he was very strictly discussing the hygienic measures to the Sangha, and that was very clearly in the Vinaya Pitaka. And actually, in fact, sometimes it's hilarious as well. There was a monk who was going to the toilet and he's not cleaning it properly, and then this was known to Buddha, and he actually made another Vinaya rule saying that you have to wash the toilet after you have finished your job, and you can't use sticks to, you can't leave behind sticks in the toilet. So it goes to that extent. And the only other instance where Buddha and healing was mentioned as far as I'm aware, as obviously I'm not an expert, so this is my reading only. That's when the Ratana Sutra was chanted at Visala Nuran. So there was a famine, a Durbiksha, and several dead bodies were found, and Buddha was invited to the Vaisali city, and he and Ananda went in, and basically the story goes that he chanted the Ratna Sutra there. So that's another instance where he didn't do any miracles or anything, but what he said is that after the chanting, the rains came, washed all the bodies, and the famine went away. So that's another instance where some form of healing is mentioned. Shall we go to Kavan then?
Okay, don't ask me to quote verse, chapter and verse, but as far as I know, the Buddha specifically said not to be worshipping trees and stones, in which case Bodhi Puja and statues, offering things to concrete statues of the Buddha is strictly against what he preached. And if you know that the Buddha definitely even banned the creation of statues of himself and said that he should be represented only by his 2 feet. My second question, so I think 5 precepts and all could be put on the top of the list, but putting Bodhi Puja on the top of top of your list as a Buddhist practice really sort of irked me. And the other question is, clearly rituals do help people. If not, people will not be doing them. We don't understand how it works, basically because we don't understand even the placebo effect, which we know exists. So has any sort of research been done to find out? I mentioned a few, but I think, you can do hopefully do some research to find out how the ritual sort of mentally works on the people, right? Whether it's strictly the way that can we put a scientific sort of understanding to that over and above just saying that it works? We know it works, so we do it. Other than that, of course, there are a lot of people who get conned into doing things which are by the financial people who make a huge lot of money from all these Bodhi Pujas and everything else, including the Christian or Buddhist or Hindu or Muslim or whatever. Thank you.
Yeah, Howard, I think, if there is some price to this, definitely there would be, a lot of research done on this. So there would be, research on the brain chemistry with regard to the Bodhi Pujas and Seth Kavi and all that. If there is money involved in this. So I think as there is no money, nobody is really interested in this. So, but of course, I agree that it's a very interesting thing to do. But I hope that in time to come, more and more would be explored on these aspects. And again, another important thing, right? Okay, yeah. Why I mentioned Bodhi Puja on top was because it was practiced exclusively. So it's a very common, I think, after all, it's not a secret that it's a very common thing. And but
you put the 5 precepts on top?
Sorry?
Wouldn't you put the 5 precepts on top rather than the Bodhi Puja?
Why I put Bodhi Puja? Because it was the kind of exclusive thing. It was practiced by everybody. But actually, now during my research, I observed, this Bodhi Puja, and actually, I saw, certain aspects related to the Bodhi Puja. I think, well, now one thing is the Buddhists, in any way, they venerate the Bo tree. So it has a special place. So I think now what I have seen, now even the way you prepare yourself for the Bodhi Puja, and the way you conduct it, and where you go around it, the serenity that is produced within you, and I would even add the hope that that is there, because I mean these things I observed, and also by talking to these people, I recorded. So I think in our I basically think this Karivasam's book also has given a lot of I mean it has filled up a lot of gaps with regard to our popular cultures practices. So I think that is one reason why it still remains a very important role in our popular culture. Bodhi
Thank you.
Puja, Kavi, these things, they remain a very important and a big position in our popular culture, because I think mainly because of the kind of involvement the entire family, the society gets involved in this, and the practical involvement. Yeah, that's what I have observed.
Thank you.
Okay, let's give a chance to Da, and then we'll come back to Arya. So Da
Hi.
Hetiarachi.
Yes. Hi, Prasanna.
Hi
First
there.
and foremost, thank you very much for your nice presentation. I would like to bring in another aspect to this whole discussion. As I see, there is a very clear demarcation between the Buddhist religion and the Buddhist philosophy. I would say it is not the philosophy what Buddha taught, or what Buddha uncleared, was the real truth of this universe. I'm the way of things happening around us. So in the Buddhist, let's call it philosophy, but anyway, it's the real truth of universe as I see. Now, Buddhist religion is the way people took it. I mean, as time goes on, now as Buddha told, it was anyway meant to be for real prajna, ප්‍රඥාවන්තයන්ට විතරයි මේ දහම කිව්වා. So anyway, later what happened was people who couldn't really get it made something out of it, that is Buddhist religion. And the religion has all these rituals and other practices like Bodhi Puja and all. Now, as I see the way of life, or the mind, the behaviors and the nature of our the minds, we can see as I mean through samatha and vipassana, and there's a very clear demarcation there again. Samatha is the stabilization of your mind, and the vipassana is the purification of your mind. I mean, by getting rid of raga, desha, moha, elimination of, you called it three
Poisons.
poisons. But there again, moha, as you described, is ignorance. But we can take this forward in another discussion. Moha is basically, as I see, the comparison. I mean, what is there we don't see, and we try to compare what is with what is not there. Like anyway, coming back to these rituals and other practices, the Buddhist religion has those, and in according to Buddhism, of course, as I see, it's always a mental healing that you get through Buddhist teachings and unveiling of the truth. All other physical ailments, of course, we can relate to Hetupala Dhamma. and Kamma Niyama, as you correctly mentioned, that the 5 niyamas, of course, is the core, is part of the core of this unveiling of truth. Now, the thing is, now this in rituals like say Bodhi Puja, for instance, we can't say, in my opinion, of course, there can be results or the gains according to the way you set your mind. I mean, we can't go and sort of, by going to a Bodhi Puja, if we are asking something from Buddha, I would say it is not going to happen. I mean, according to Buddha teachings, there is no such thing. But when you do a Bodhi Puja, if you are purifying your mind, I mean, if you are getting rid of our Raga, Desha, Moha, so there is a way to Nibbana, and there will be definitely a result that is, I mean, it will help us, finishing or coming to end of samsaric journey. And that is the result of all these ritual practices. And unless we try to get rid of this Raga, Desha, Moha, of course, there is no healing as I see. And final and ultimate healing is Nibbana, that is to get rid of all sort of, to end all sort of dukkha. And I think there are a lot of distortions in our society. I mean, between the Buddhist teachings today, I mean, religion. Today, what we see is the most of the teachings and the Dhamma, even preaching, we find the religious aspect, that is trying to teach how to spend a good life. Of course, every religion talks and teaches about the way of life, how to be, out not to harm people and sort of spend your life meaningfully, whatever. But the real Buddhism talked about how to end samsaric journey. So that comes from Vipassana Bhavana, how to purify, how to get rid of Raga, Desha, Moha is the key thing. So I see a mix of things in our present day Buddhism practices. And Vipassana, even Satipatthana is basically is there to purify the mindset. And the Samatha, which is practiced in most of the Western countries, of course, address the stabilization or calmness in our mind, how to reach that. So this is my way of looking at things, and I may or may not be correct. We can take this discussion in our future forums. Thank you very much again for your presentation. Good to see you after some time. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Arya, have you still got a question, or is it a legacy hand? Oh,
Thanks, Rowan. Before I go on to my question, can I alert you to Darshini's question on the chat line, which you may attend to later. Coming back to Praveena, Praveena, you mentioned about mindfulness being a mega business, and you might know this, and also some participants might have also known this. There was a contingent, there was a huge team that came over to Oxford University not long ago to attend a 2-week conference learning about mindfulness. And interestingly, they were getting back to Sri Lanka to teach the parliamentarians about mindfulness. I don't know whether you heard about it, and I hope they have learned something. They might get more money from IMF if they have.
Yes.
My question is, of course, again, going back to mindfulness, have you linked it to your research, on the ritual side of things that you have already alluded to? And also, do you see the prospect of mindfulness as a form of science or an art replacing the so-called Buddhist rituals?
Well, can you please repeat the last line?
With regards to mindfulness, do you see mindfulness as a new concept that is being developed now and being talked about and also being practiced on a large scale? Do you think the concept of mindfulness replacing the old traditional unscientific Buddhist rituals that you have already talked about? That could be your future, research, but I'm just asking you that question now.
Well, if I'm to give a quick answer to your question, I think if mindfulness has gone to the wider world and it is being benefited, I think that's fine. I mean, that's fine by Buddhism. So here, what I think is, I don't know whether mindfulness will replace the other rituals, because from the perspective I see, I'm not really bothered, whether it is mindfulness or anything else, as long as it's going to give benefit to people and calm in the mind and stabilizing the mind. But one thing I would like to say, and apart from mindfulness, there's the Vipassana Bhavana, Metta Bhavana, and so many, Buddhist meditative practices that can go to the wider world and which can benefit the sick, and also even even which has a benefit even for the healthy, for everybody. So I think there are many avenues to open up, and I think this is because I think it is happening. I mean, it is now happening in a quite appreciable way, I think, at present. I mean, more and more people are becoming aware of these practices, and they are exploring these things. And I think, even some of our Sri Lankan Buddhist monks, but more than Sri Lankan Buddhist monks, I think, a lot of monks from Myanmar and Thailand are into this. So I think, after all, I think what I expect would be, more and more Buddha Vachana should go to the wider world, and that would benefit the people.
Thank you very much, Pravina. Ruan, are you there?
Sorry, I just had to go out. Any other questions? Any more?
And don't forget the chat line, yeah.
Oh, yes. Right. Let's see what Darshini's question is. Well, can either Darshini or Ranjan come out with the question?
I can read it to you, and then Darshini can come in if necessary.
Yeah. If you want to, yeah.
She has posted this question. Did Lord Buddha ever describe about acupuncture and the existence of chakras described in Hinduism? Barshini, are you there? You can follow it up.
Yeah, it's me. I'm just asking about whether there's any any description about the chakras, what is been described by the Hinduism, like 114 chakras, or in acupuncture, maybe about 700 odd chakras and the points in the body. So, and
Yeah.
everything about, because they are the ones, they like, again, they say like the disease comes from imbalance of these chakras and all the whatever the meridians in the body. And so this has this been described by Lord Buddha. And the next thing is a question about the Reiki healing. Reiki healing, I think, because I have practiced Reiki in the past, and from the International Reiki Foundation, and they all consider, like Lord Buddha is in one of the birds, that he was a Reiki healer. So still they go back to the olden times, that how energy from the universe is being sort of gone through from one person to the other and treating diseases. Whether this has been described in your text, or?
Yeah, well, answer to your question, I can't, give a direct answer to that. But as far as I know, not in Theravada Buddhism, but perhaps in the other traditions of Buddhism. You may remember I mentioned in one of my slides also, in Mahayana Sutras, among the Mahayana Sutras, there are these sutras like the Sutra of Dharani for healing of all diseases. So, and the Sutra of Dharani for seasonal diseases. So the Dharani is, it's, I think perhaps, it is chakra or something, similar to chakra. I'm not very conversant with that, but anyhow, this again, something, that goes in that line. So when it comes to Mahayana and Vajrayana medicine, there could be references to that, but there again I do not know much about or rather I would say I doubt about their authenticity, because because most of these things are very much to do from to do with what was prevalent in the Indian subcontinent then. So we know, if you draw a line, the Theravada from the, well, after all, then Indian subcontinent, I don't have to explain to you, and very well about this. It was something, going even beyond Afghanistan, and here covering Pakistan, and going beyond Bangladesh. It was such a massive continent, and in the southern part only we got Theravada flourishing, and in the Mahayana flourished in the northern part. So there were a lot of other traditions, other religious traditions, and other philosophies that invariably infused their knowledge into this, and this is evident. Although Theravada is somewhat conversant, rather conservative about these things. But actually, when you go to Mahayana, when you study the Mahayana texts, you see there could be things which are which generally do not fall into the domain of Theravada.
Okay, thank you.
Nurwan, put my hand up again. Hello, Ruan, are you back?
Yeah, go ahead, Mahendra.
Okay, right. Just another thing. I think whenever we either study or listen to anything about Buddhism, the question of interpretation always comes in. And it's impossible to avoid that, because language is not finite. It's always something that can be interpreted. And so I think that handicap will always be there with any ancient sect of any kind, or even modern one. But you mentioned about money and financing and marketing. Now, if I were a marketing man asked to spread the value of Buddhism, I would have no hesitation in saying that as a way of organizing your life to gain maximum happiness, it will teach you lessons that are extremely valuable and will be helpful. No doubt about that. If you also tell, if I also tell people that when it comes to mental illness, there's a lot more than just what we see physically. There are other forces in operation. You may call them spiritual, you may call them mind, whatever it is, and those are very adequately dealt with Buddhism. I would against it. But if I'm in charge of promoting healthcare in a population, say I'm the head of the National Health Service in UK, I wouldn't find much help with Buddhism, apart from saying that your general health will improve because the lifestyle and the diet and all that. But it gives me no clue at all about the ultimate causation of disease in a practical way. You might say the niyamas talk about it, but they're not specific enough. So Buddhism would not help me to formulate a healthcare plan to help people. Even simple things like sanitation, washing hands, importance of, obvious things doesn't come to you naturally. It doesn't say so in Buddhism. And to say that the 5 niyamas ultimately would describe that may be true, but it's not practical help. So coming back to it, if I'm selling Buddhism, I would say it's absolutely top grade for mental health, index of happiness, achieving what you can while you're alive. Forget about nirvana, that may come on, not come, we don't know about that, but you'd have a better life. Yes, I would agree. But if I'm told, okay, now using Buddhist principle, can you formulate a healthcare plan to prevent illness? I'll be completely at loss.
Well, I think what you posed was not really a question, it was a comment.
Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm to, give a comment from my side, what I would like to suggest to you is, I mean, you are in a good mindset. Why don't you, explore a bit more on Buddhism? I'm sure, you would find answer to your concern. Because I'm sure the answer to your concern is there in Buddhism. That, only thing is that, we are seeing these things, from different perspectives. But I'm sure for whatever the perspective, the answer is there. But because I think, to put it in a nutshell, a good healthcare plan, yes, it is possible.
I know what you mean. Funny enough, I was given the same answer.
You have to start from the beginning. I mean, you have to, it is, I mean, starting from the shedding of your Dvesa, Raga, Moha, and to the 8 Arya Ashtangika Marga. So I think there is a possibility of developing a healthcare plan. But again, I pose the question whether it is compatible with the present capitalist system is a question.
What you say is very interesting, and I'm not going to argue with you because what you say is true. As far as Buddhism is concerned, you have to realize personally through introspection and understanding. That's true. But funny enough, I was told the same thing by a Christian. He said, Mahendra, the problem with you don't have faith. If you have faith in Jesus, if you have faith in God, everything will be clear to you.
No, I think that the difference here is, we are not talking about the faith, but you have a opportunity to explore it yourself, and you would see a side, which others don't see.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
If there are no other questions, let's conclude this session by thanking Prasanna. Prasanna, it was very interesting to all of us. And thank you so much for obliging our invitation and talking to us. And as usual, this is the time for everybody to unmute and give our thanks to Prasanna in the usual manner. Thank you very much, Prasanna. Thank you. Thank you all.
Money, they all come in there.